So, the most important part of the tree is the tree itself. And what secret special material are we going to use to make the tree itself? That's right, pipe cleaners. Now these guys are way too long as is, so we're going to snip them down to size to be a little bit more manageable. Personally, I just cut them in half, but if you're working with a different material, here are the measurements I use. So I just grab a handful of them. There's no real specific number you're aiming for. You just kind of got to be aware of the more you have, the thicker the trunk's going to be and the more branches you have. Now I start by taking that clump and I kind of pinch off a little bit of it at the end that we're going to use for the roots and to attach to the base later. Then I'm going to twist it out. Now for this kind of games I play and the scale they're at, I'm aiming for about 2 inches on that trunk length. This way it's like models can really interact with them, sneak under them, so on and so forth. And as far as the branch is concerned, I really just kind of let it guide me. So as I'm kind of twisting it up, I really just let the natural flow of it go. If I kind of start seeing a couple moving off in one direction, I just twist them off into that direction. It's really the most important part here is turn off your brain and don't stress about it. Go with the flow. Now, lastly, you can see me kind of fiddling with the position a little bit over here. This is really just because, again, it's the first armature and I'm really kind of getting it right, but this isn't something you have to worry about. Just get it in a way that looks natural and move on. One other quick tip here is that if you have a piece that's a little too long, kind of fold it in on itself to make another little Y. That's really good for attaching things onto later on. And this should be a super stress-free process. I think it took me less than an hour to throw 7 of them together. I really should have timed that. But anyway, just relax and knock them out. And at this point, you can glue them onto any kind of base you desire. For here, I'm just going to be using a little washer to give them some weight so they're not always tipping over. And that's it. It's done. Doesn't it look great? Super easy, super fast. You can knock out a ton of... Whoa. Okay, so it's not the best. No, that's just hurtful. What? Okay, I admit it's not the best, but hey, it's quick. Okay, there's no reason for that kind of language. You know what? Fine. That's it. Throwing it away. You know what? No. I'm gonna burn it down. For real though? That's pretty good. So, kids, when using fire, get under adult supervision. Now, adults, if you're here, you probably need adult supervision. The real trick here is to not remove all of the fluff from the pipe cleaner. We want to leave some volume there to add some thickness to the trees, so that way we're not building it up from scratch. Else we would have just used normal wires. And similar to painting models, be sure to move the armature around in a way that feels more natural and easier to kind of burn off those little bits. And most importantly, to move around in a way to not burn yourself. Full disclosure, I struggled a lot here. So finding the right material was hard, and I still don't even think I did it. So jump to it. I used gesso to seal and prime these guys. I actually got turned on to the material from Eric from Eric's Hobby Workshop. Great content, love his stuff. But that's not important right now. The gesso, I don't think was the solution. So the ideal material I have in mind is something that's cheap, economical, and easy for hobbyists to approach. I also want it to be a little thicker, something that fills in the gaps from any like excess fur or clump, but not too thick that it obscures all of that texture we have from the twisted wires. If it was semi-rigid, that'd be preferable. You know, give it a little bit more durability to survive falls and bumps, but also not rubber to give it that icky feeling. I know this material is out there. I'm racking my brain trying to find it. And if you might know what it is, maybe pop down in the comments below and let me know. And while you're there, you know, go ahead and like, subscribe, and all that stuff. I did a bunch of brainstorming trying to figure out what a good material would be. I thought about coating them in hot glue, but that's going to take a lot of time, and, well, it's going to have that rubbery problem I talked about before. I considered doing toilet paper mache, but again, it's going to take forever. It'd leave a great texture and check off the other boxes. I thought about doing it in UV resin if I could just dip it in there and cure it, but that's going to alienate a lot of hobbyists on top of being kind of expensive. So eventually I did just stick with the gesso because it is fairly cheap. I really didn't go through that much of it. The issue is the time it took. Each of these armatures I had to hand coat twice, and on top of that I let them dry overnight each time. So I burned out 2 whole days just on this process. Now I'm actually thinking of, back when I used to kind of cosplay a little bit, a material that might be best is some Plasti Dip. Not the actual dip kind, but the spray kind. So if I ever do this again, I'm definitely going to try it out with that. Alright, so with that crisis averted, let's go on and move to getting some color on these. And the answer is about as simple as you think it is. I just use contrast paints. Wildwood in this instance, I really enjoy the color. Okay, so maybe not as simple. I went through a lot of contrast paint doing this, so perhaps an alternative is preferable. Whether you choose Army Painter, I actually think I might pick up a couple of the Green Stuff World dip inks, just for the sheer volume that they come with. Now, greenery is the last part to make these trees really come to life. But, you know, if you're looking for dead trees, you can actually just end it here and be perfectly fine. But I want more than just dead trees, so I'm going to keep going. Now, to really bulk out the foliage, I'm going to be using reindeer moss. So anyway, I just glued it down to the ends of branches, and then any other places that looked particularly barren and would be odd if I just left them blank. Here, I'm using the hot glue just for the convenience of it. It's easy to work with and dries fast. So, to finish it off, I'm going to be using a couple of tricks I've learned from Geek Gaming Scenics, and I'm going to be using varnishes to adhere the flock to all of my greenery. Now, a couple of warnings here. Firstly, always do this outside or in a well-vented area, or you will suffocate and die. Second warning, drip warning. Now, I just used 2 tones here, but feel free to use as many as you'd like. I used kind of a darker, more desaturated tone, only at the bottom facing it, and then my regular green on top. Another thing too is while you're letting these things fully dry, perhaps put them somewhere that it's not really going to be any living stuff, because those fumes are still going to be reeking off of these armatures. Now, a few coats of a Geek Gaming Scenic and you're all set with these trees. Now, let's really explore the cost of these guys. I actually kept my receipt from the Michaels I went to pick up all of my supplies from, which I'm sure you can find them cheaper somewhere else. I paid $5 for all of the pipe cleaners, $10 for the reindeer moss. I'm not even counting the expenses I've incurred from a couple of the other things, like gesso is something I'm going to be using on a lot more projects going forward, so I didn't really use a substantial enough of it to really count it. Same thing with the flocking. So this is flock that I've used for other projects beforehand, and these 5 trees that I've done, and I'm still not even below a quarter. It's barely noticeable how much flock I've used. So Really, we're looking at the cost of reindeer moss and pipe cleaners, which came to about $15. I haven't even touched the end of the supply on my pipe cleaners. I still have so many left. As far as the reindeer moss, depending on your placement of it, you can probably get anywhere from 10 to 15 per package. So that rounds us in at ballpark $1.25 per tree. So now we've got ourselves a tree that's both a super low time investment and a super low cost investment. Sounds like a win to me. So, what do you think? Personally, I still have a couple of issues here. Like for these scatter ones, I'll probably move them to actual bases now. Even with the washers, you can see they're still kind of falling over all the time. Maybe something a little wider will give them some more support. Secondly, the varnish isn't a super precise tool. So there's definitely some parts of overspray where I had some of the flocking stick to areas where there wasn't any of the reindeer moss. I was able to brush off some of it, but others it kind of stuck there. I could probably come back through with the contrast paint, but even at that, it's not like it's a huge deal. It's more just something to be aware of. And finally, I know somewhere there's that perfect material to do these with. But anyway, that's been me. I hope to see you again next time, and keep crafting.